Dr. Puppenstein's Creature Feature. Good evening. It is I, Dr. Puppenstein, and this October I've tasked one of my minions with bringing you the scariest, spookiest, and most fun yet appropriately themed games for Halloween. Igor, bring the games! Thank you, Doctor. It's actually Uno, but yeah, whatever. So, what I've done here is I've put together a list of 13 of my favorite games to play in October as we get ready for Halloween, or even play on Halloween night here. And I tried to focus on accessibility here, and by that I mean games that are easy to track down on modern consoles. So that's going to be Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. So, not every game on this list is going to be on all three systems. Quite a few of them aren't or are even exclusives. But not this one, actually. The one you're looking at right now, Friday the 13th, of course, in the number 13 spot, because where else would it be? That is available on all three consoles and on PC as well, I'm happy to say. So, you shouldn't have any problem getting your hands on this one. And I got nothing but glowing praise for this game. I love it. I've played it on my channel before, and if you've listened to me podcast, you've heard me talk about how much I love this game. Really, it's very unique. I know it has Dead by Daylight out there that a lot of people compare it to, but personally, I think this is the better game. I know it's got more killers in the other game, but here you're doing things like you know, starting up cars by installing batteries, or like you're seeing here, I just fixed a phone box and now I'm calling the cops, so that will trigger an exit scenario here in just a little bit. And yeah, there's just more ways for the survivors to get out of the situation. Although Jason is really just brutal and relentless, and good Jason players make it very hard for survivors to get out of this thing alive. But that's kind of the idea and the fun, right? So yeah, look into this one if you haven't. I know it had a rough launch when it came out and it got some bad reviews here and there, but they've made a lot of progress on this game in the time since, and it's really fantastic. The next game I want to talk about is Catherine. Now, Catherine might not make a lot of people's lists of games to play for Halloween, but I promise you, it's totally appropriate. If you're not familiar, it's about a guy named Vincent who's in his early 30s, who's kind of going through a little bit of a midlife crisis. His longtime girlfriend, Catherine, is talking to him about marriage and possibly having kids and basically taking their relationship to the next level, and he's not entirely comfortable with it, or he's just kind of not sure. And all of this is just really crazy timing because he ends up meeting a younger girl also named Catherine, who's kind of easy, breezy, no strings attached, and very different from his longtime girlfriend. And that kind of messes up everything for him. And also at the same time, and here's the scary part, the Halloween appropriate part, men just about Vincent's age are dying all over the city, and the rumor has it that they've all been caught cheating. And so, wouldn't you know it, early in the game, Vincent wakes up next to the younger Catherine and realizes he's cheated. Way to go, idiot. And so you set out to help Vincent navigate his deadly nightmares and hopefully avoid getting murdered in his sleep. And that is why Catherine makes the list of games for October. Now, if you want to check this out, the best way to play it, in my opinion, is the PlayStation 4 release known as Catherine Full Body. It's got an added love interest, a third Catherine, if you can believe it. Yes, they're all named Catherine. But it also, more importantly, adds more context to certain scenes and just kind of fleshes out the writing in a lot of ways that answer some questions and address some issues I had with the original release. However, if you don't have a PlayStation 4, you can play this on PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 or on Xbox One via backward compatibility, or PC as the regular Catherine release, and those are all totally worth it. And now for something completely different, we are going back to the early 90s. Actually, if you want to go pre-release to when this was filmed, this would be the 1980s for Night Trap. Now, I know what you're thinking. what? Night Trap has got a terrible reputation. Yes, I know. I will cover that in just a second. But if you're not familiar with this game, a little bit of background really quick. So basically there's this big house that you're looking at here on all these cameras, and it's owned by a family of vampires who have loaded it with traps so that they can lure people into their home and basically use the traps to capture them and then ultimately drain their blood, right? Because they're vampires, that's what you do. These guys that you see getting trapped, though, these are not people being lured to the house. These are actually henchmen for the vampires, and the traps are being turned on them by you, the player. So the premise here is that there's a slumber party that's happening here over the course of a weekend, and however, there's like a... this is so cheesy and convoluted, but there's like a SWAT team that's aware of the fact that these guys are up to something weird here. They don't know that they're vampires, but they know people are like going into this house and potentially disappearing. So they've like hacked control of the camera system and also the traps that the cameras are connected to, and that's where you come in. You're like working at a remote location, and you're turning the traps on all of these henchmen and ultimately the vampires while trying to save the slumber party girls. So it's very cheesy. It's very like you know, not really serious. It's certainly not scary, but it just kind of has like a certain mood that I think some people could really appreciate. And if you like 1980s era slasher movies, this feels like one of those. It feels like a cheesier end of that. Kind of like the movie Sleepaway Camp, which is a classic. It feels a little bit like that, but less, you know, without the disturbing ending. And the deaths are not nearly as... I don't want to say graphic. I guess those were maybe graphic back in the 80s when Sleepaway Camp came out, but they just don't have the edge in Night Trap here, right? It doesn't have the teeth that Sleepaway Camp does. It's way easier to digest. And it's just kind of more fun. But so while this might not scare the crap out of you, there are other games on the list that we'll get to that will offer that kind of experience. But this is just something really different, and I think great for October, man. Like, if you've got your Shudder subscription going this month and you're looking for all kinds of horror movies, everything from cheesy to scary, like, this falls into the cheesy horror movie category, but it's a video game, and it's cool. Now, real quick, just to touch on the reviews and stuff here. It's got a legacy of being shit on from people, right? And I think back when the game came out, it sort of deserved that criticism. It was very ambitious at the time, but it just didn't nail the execution. And now, the reason that it's more playable now is because this 25th Anniversary Edition here, which I have to say Screaming Villains, the developer, did a great job bringing this back, getting all the footage and remastering everything. That alone in itself is a great accomplishment. But what they did was they took it a step further, and you see those little 8 thumbnails on the bottom of the screen there. That's each room of the house, or each area of the house that you have control over, right? And it's a live feed. So you can look down there and see what's going on in any part of the house at any given time. And you can kind of see the entire picture of how things are playing out. And back when this game came out, those were just still photos. They didn't have live feeds. They didn't have the power that they needed to have, you know, simultaneous feeds running all in one, picture-in-picture and all that stuff, right? So it was just static photos, and you kind of had to guess what was going on in any room at any given time. And when there are multiple things happening in multiple rooms, it was super confusing. So I get it, you know. I feel like this game was ahead of its time back then. But now we're in a place where you've got these modern consoles that can more than handle running this thing. I have to say, it does seem like it has some performance issues at times, and that footage can kind of be skippy and a little weird, and you're probably picking up on that through some of this footage here. And I don't really know why that is, but I will say that it didn't detract from my enjoyment at all. I've played through this a bunch of times. I've had a great time doing it. I'm really happy to own a copy on PS4, so I'm always up for trying to get more people to give this game a chance, because I think it's very unique, it's very cool, and this is certainly the time of year to enjoy it. Now I know what you're thinking. All that time spent on Night Trap, we're still just 3 games in, and you have yet to be scared. Well, I have got you covered now. The Evil Within is a fantastic series of games. It's just 2, but they're both scary as hell. And the second one is especially good, and you get all kinds of rad imagery like this. Just a lot of mind games being played, a lot of cool jump scares, a lot of fantastic creature designs, and the gunplay is really great in these games. I found these both to be pretty unsettling when I was playing them. There's a really nice balance of horror, but also being equipped to tackle different challenges and enemies and stuff, so you never feel helpless, which is important to me because I don't really care for games where you're just constantly running all the time and you can't even, you can't fight back at all. Those have never really been my kind of thing. But this game gives you, a pretty good arsenal to deal with issues and stuff, but you still feel kind of powerless and scared at times, just because the imagery is so effective, and the sound, oh my gosh, the sound is really great in these games. So I can't say enough good things about them. I've been actually playing through The Evil Within 2 this year for the first time, and it's been a lot of fun, and it makes me wonder why I waited so long, because I played The Evil Within 1 back when it came out, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know it was a little polarizing. Some people really dug it, other people did not. But I thought it felt kind of like that, it scratched that Resident Evil 4 itch for me, and I liked it. So, it made sense that I should get The Evil Within 2, but I dragged my feet on it, and I guess in a way I'm glad I did, because now I get to enjoy it. And it's brand new for me, and somehow I didn't have it spoiled over all this time. But I think either way you can't go wrong. Go pick up Evil Within 1 or 2. If you want to not sleep at night, these are your games. Now it's time for me to tell you why Killing Floor 2 needs to be on your list of games to play this October. I mean, aside from the obvious here, look at the screen. Look at this awesome map that I'm running around on. It's called Monster Ball, and it's from the Halloween event, I think a couple of years ago now. But what's great is when the seasonal events happen, you get to keep the stuff that comes with them. So this map's stuck around, and you can play on it anytime. You can play on it, for Easter if you want to. But anyway, if you're not familiar with this game, it is a highly polished, fantastic co-op shooter. You can play it single player if you want to, like I'm doing here, or you can play with up to a team of 6 people online. And it's a good time. There's a lot of depth here. You can pick different characters, different classes. You level up your abilities and your weapons. In between rounds, you visit a shop like what you're seeing here, and you can earn money toward getting better weapons and stuff. And, there's a lot to keep you coming back here. And honestly, this is one of my favorite games of the generation. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here recommending it. I'll just give you this little taste of the game and say this is one of the easiest recommendations I've ever had. Definitely don't hesitate to pick up Killing Floor 2. Time to kick it old school with some Super Ghouls and Ghosts. That's right, this tough-as-nails platformer is definitely an October/Halloween classic. I like to revisit this one about every couple of years or so, maybe every Halloween or so. I guess I dig it out. And I just play the opening few levels and I get my taste, because then it starts to get really, really difficult, and I can never seem to progress without a great deal of effort beyond those opening levels. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, sometimes the bug gets me and I put a little more time into it. But this is a great game. If you have a Nintendo Switch, you can play this through the online service where you can access the Super Nintendo games now. And also, if you have a Super Nintendo Classic, you can get your hands on this game. And, this is just one that's aged really well. The look doesn't look super dated to me. This looks like it could have been an indie release that just came out on the modern systems, in my opinion. So it's an easy recommendation. It still plays great, however you experience this. If you're curious, I'm using the Super Nintendo Classic to capture this footage here, and it runs great there, honestly. And it's pre-baked into that system again, so you don't have to do any hacking or anything if you don't want to. That process is super easy, though. So if you're going to get a Super Nintendo Classic, I highly recommend looking into Hack Chi. But, you know, if you don't want to mess with that, you just want to play what's there, this is there, and it's great. So, yeah, don't hesitate. Also, alternatively, if you've got a Sony PSP or a PlayStation Vita, you can play Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, or Ultimate Ghouls and Ghosts. What is this one called? I forget the name, but it starts with Ultimate. And if you really want a challenge, this is out there. It's pretty cool. I like it. This one I also like to dig out from time to time, and I do think it's very hard, but it's got some more options that the old game doesn't. It's got more weapons, more armor types. It's super aggressive with the enemies, as you can see here. But it's a good time, and I kind of enjoy the updated look. So, yeah, if you've got a Vita or a PSP, look into this one as well. And next up on the list, I've got Medieval for PS4. Now, Medieval, I wanted to put right after Super Ghouls and Ghosts because I feel like they're kind of kindred spirits in a way, right? They've both got that classic Halloween aesthetic going on with the graveyards and the undead and that kind of stuff, but they're also both retro games. Medieval, of course, has got an obvious facelift here from the original release that came out in the late 90s, but I think it looks really great, and I don't really feel like it needed the gameplay to be updated. I'm fine with it playing the way that it did back then. Being as familiar with the old game as I am, like I'm confident people are going to be able to play this one and enjoy it, despite having just a visual update and no gameplay updates. Because I think it's fun, it's simple, and sometimes that can be enough. I also think it's going to come out at a discounted price as well. They're not asking for a full $60 here, so that is another feather in its cap as far as accessibility goes, right? Cheaper is better for more people usually. But also, I think this game is just cool. It's got a neat story that I think people have remembered over the years, and it's definitely worth revisiting. Basically, your hero Dan is remembered as this great hero. He defeated the great evil, you know, at least that's how the memory goes. But the truth, which you're watching here in one of these early cutscenes, is that Dan rushed out to battle leading the charge, and he died early in the battle. But the history books chose to remember him as a hero rather than like basically the first one dead. So now, what he's doing is coming back for a second chance as an undead, you know, whatever, skeleton guy. And this time he's really going to put down the evil to live up to his own legend. It's kind of, you know, setting things straight. So check out Medieval. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it too. Next up on the list is Zombie Army Trilogy. Now this is another favorite of mine. I've been playing this game for years on my PlayStation 4. You can also get it on Xbox One or PC. And if you go the console route, you can get a physical copy, which is nice, because I love having stuff on disc. But basically, this is a 4-player cooperative shooter. You can play it with fewer players if you want to. You can play it alone like I am here in the footage we're watching. It's just fun. It's got great shooting mechanics here. It feels really crisp. Obviously, the long-range sniping being the draw here with the very cool X-ray slow-motion shots. And if you're not really familiar with this game, what it is it's the collection of what began as DLC expansions for another series, I think the Sniper Elite series. So basically, what's going on is it's just after World War II. The Nazis are super desperate, they're about to get crushed, and Hitler, in a last-ditch effort to win, I guess, I don't know, somehow raises the undead army, opens the gates of hell, and now you're basically here to stop that. And so that's the story being told over these 3 expansions, which make up the one retail package here known as Zombie Army Trilogy. There's going to be another one of these coming next year, or at least last I heard it was slated for 2020. It's called Zombie Army 4, and I don't know if they're going to stick with that name or not, but either way, it's going to be one to keep an eye on. This one is a ton of fun. You can play this in the meantime, and I've seen this one all over the place for like $20. Even I think retail copies and stuff go for around that. And there's a good amount of content for your money here. There's
like I said, about 15 or so campaign missions that take about 45 minutes to an hour, depending, I guess, on how much you're just crushing it to complete those. But then there's also a horde mode, which is cool. So dedicated horde maps that they made just for the mode too. And one that's kind of seems to be a fan favorite that's really popular. It's literally just a back alley. It's just a straight shot with a cool light source at the end of the alley that keeps casting these rad shadows on the wall and stuff. I feel like I should have gotten footage of that for the video here, but it's cool. The horde mode maps are neat. They're their own thing. It's like they can appreciate that it's a separate mode and they didn't just try to, I guess, make the campaign maps fit with hordes. So yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, it's there. Otherwise, if you prefer the point A to point B adventure style levels, that's what the campaign is for, right? So gather around your friends for this one. It's online co-op only, unfortunately. I wish that this had split screen. In fact, I wish that this was on the Nintendo Switch with like local multiplayer of some sort, because it seems like it would be the perfect fit for that system, honestly. It's a great party game, and it's just so straightforward, and it's also not super taxing. These, you know, I think it's got a good look to it. The graphics are good enough, but it doesn't strike me as like something that maybe the Switch couldn't handle. I think the Switch could maybe pull this one off, so... Anyway, yeah, Zombie Army Trilogy. Don't forget this one, alright? Don't sleep on it. Check it out. So, in keeping with the zombie theme, we're now going to move on to Zombie, which is just zombie without the E. That's right, Z-O-M-B-I. This came out on PS4 and Xbox One and PC, I think a couple of years ago, but originally this was a Wii U title known as Zombie U. Now, I know the Wii U had its fans, but I don't think that this game had as many people playing it as Ubisoft would have liked, which is why it got a second chance on the modern consoles and on PC. But this is a fantastic survival horror game. It really is. I absolutely adore this game. It just makes you kind of dread seeing what's around the next corner sometimes. I think it's very effective with its atmosphere and its sound design, and just also the look on the faces of the zombies and stuff. They're very creepy looking, I think. Also, the danger that comes with each encounter really ratchets up the tension, especially when you're running low on supplies. But thankfully, the game doesn't starve you for those supplies. You can definitely have moments where you're strapped and you feel like, oh, you know, I could use some more healing items, or I sure am low on ammo right now. But you never feel like, man, I've been playing forever and I haven't been able to find any damn ammo. This sucks. You know, they find a good balance. And the best games, the best survival horror games, rather, will do that. And this one definitely gets that balance right, I think. So, you know, it maintains a good tension, and it maintains this constant feeling of, okay, I've found the stuff that I need, I'm feeling pretty good now, and versus, you know, those other moments where it's like, oh man, I'm overwhelmed, what am I going to do? I could really find myself in over my head here any minute now. And things can escalate quickly in this game. Depending on your decision-making abilities, things can go from bad to worse to much, much worse. So, but they can also go really, really well, and it's those momentary highs and those feelings of safety and security that can really pay off, and it just finds a really nice cadence of switching between the two for you. And so this one is an easy recommendation, not just for this time of year, but for horror fans in general. Anytime you want to play a game like this, definitely make sure that this one's on your list to get around to sometime. Next is the Dark Pictures anthology, Man of Madamn. Now this one just came out not too long ago this year, but I got all the way through it a couple of times and really enjoyed my time with it, so I wanted to make sure that it made the list here. If you played Until Dawn, this is pretty familiar territory. It's a shorter experience, but it does pack a punch, and it's got some pretty good jump scares in here. There's a mystery to be solved here, and while I feel like I kind of figured it out way before the main characters did, I was still invested enough in the story to see if it played out the way I thought it would. Now, I could nitpick this thing if I wanted to, but overall I had a good time with it and enjoyed myself, so really, there's no better recommendation than that. Also, it's at a lower price point. I believe it retails for $30, but I know I've seen it on sale for around $20 or so already, which is just one more reason to jump in on this one. It's also worth noting that this is the first game in a planned series known as the Dark Pictures Anthology, meaning we're going to get more games using that branding.
Right.
And if you like stuff like Creepshow and Tales from the Crypt, this definitely pays homage to that with a host character who kind of introduces you to the story and also signs off at the end. He checks in, I think, a couple of times in the middle, too. So it's just neat. I like that kind of thing. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more games under the Dark Pictures branding, and I strongly encourage people to check this one out. Now I want to talk for just a bit about the Resident Evil series. It's hard to make a list like this and ignore these games. I mean, they do feel kind of like a no-brainer, right? Like any list worth its salt for scary games that you would play in October should have some Resident Evil games on it, if not at least one, right? So, yeah, I thought, I'd better cover it, I'd better throw it on here. Everybody knows what these games are. Everybody's heard of these for the most part. I just wanted to focus on 3 that I think are particularly easy to access right now. Now, of course, you're looking at the Resident Evil 2 remake that came out earlier this year on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and I think PC as well. And this one, it might be my game of the year. It's a real easy recommendation. If you don't have one of the main consoles and you don't play on PC, so basically if you're just a Switch owner, you can play this one. You can play the remake of the original Resident Evil game. This has been on a ton of systems. This is still on PS4, Xbox One, I said Switch. It originated on the GameCube. I know you can buy this on PlayStation 3 because I've got it there as well. This one's all over the place, and honestly, it's a timeless classic. I mean, look at the amazing set here. It's just so damn good. The attention to detail and stuff. This is a game that I feel like will just never feel old to me. It's always going to be a staple for around this time of year. But if you've played that one a lot of times and you're kind of ready for something else, maybe think about going back to Resident Evil 4. Of course, Resident Evil 4 is another legendary title and another one that's all over the place. I mean, you can play this freaking everywhere, too. I think all the systems I just named for the original remake, you can play this on those as well. And it's great. It holds up. I think some of the movement and aiming stuff is slightly dated in this one, I guess. It doesn't feel as good as it does if you're playing like Resident Evil 2, the remake, right? If you go all these remakes, if you play the Resident Evil 2 remake and then you go to this, it's kind of a shock, but this still plays well enough, I think. And what it might lack in modern sensibilities, it makes up for in all of the character and just the great settings and the mystique behind everything happening when you are kind of exploring these areas for the first time. So really, this one, I don't even know what else I can say about it. I mean, this is one of those timeless games, right? It's like trying to tell somebody why they need to play, Ocarina of Time or Symphony of the Night or something like that. I mean, it's Resident Evil 4, man. Get to it. Plus, I mean, any game that has a cameo by Huey, the mighty dog from Haunting Ground, another one of my favorite horror games, but unfortunately not on this list because it's not easily accessible. Anyway, the Huey cameo gets an extra special thumbs up.
Hey, it's that dog.
Good boy. As we near the end of the list, I thought it would be a good time to make sure we include Bloodstained. Bloodstained has been a really good time this year. I've been enjoying it since it came out earlier this summer. It definitely puts off a little bit of that Halloween vibe with the whole gothic horror theme that it's got going on. And lots of skeletons and, ghostly figures and bats and that kind of thing flying around. A lot of imagery of full moons and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, right at home on a list like this. Originally, I was going to put Castlevania Symphony of the Night on this list, but then I thought, you know what? Konami can't be bothered to give Switch players an option for playing it, so I'm going to go ahead and omit it, even though it is one of the all-time greats. Also, I'm not happy with that port that came with Rondo of Blood on PS4. They changed the voice acting, and they changed the sound effects and a lot of other things, so yeah. Now, we're going to omit Castlevania because Konami can't put in effort, and in its place, we're going to have Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Now, other than being thematically appropriate, the game has got a lot of depth. It's got a lot for you to sink your teeth into, haha, pun intended. And I think you'll be playing this one for a while, no matter where you get it. It's on PS4 right now, obviously. It's also on Xbox One, and it's even a Game Pass title, so if you have a subscription there, you're in luck. And then you can, of course, get this on Nintendo Switch. There is some, I don't know, I guess pickiness about the quality of the Switch port. Personally, I've got the Switch version, and I'm quite happy with it. I've got about 70% or so of the map covered and in that version so far. And I've enjoyed all my time with it. It's not perfect. There are a couple of times when you notice that performance could be better. But, you know, I don't feel like that should really dominate the discussion about this game. I think there's a really quality game here no matter where you play it. And people should check this out, absolutely. And I guess since we're talking about the performance on the Nintendo Switch, I should also mention that as of right now, in November, they are planning to release a patch that pretty much overhauls the game. There's going to be new assets that are less taxing on the hardware, and they're optimizing for performance from the sound of it. So if you have any hesitation, I guess wait and see how that shakes out. But really, you got the green light from me. Go play it now. I really think it's great. I love the atmosphere. The music is fantastic. It's one of the best soundtracks I've heard all year, easily. And I'm really happy to be a Kickstarter backer, because that means I opted for the version that came with the soundtrack on a disc, so pretty happy to have that. But yeah, this is totally the right game for this time of year, so by all means, make sure that you check it out. It's a good time. And now, at long last, the final game on the list, Doom 3. Doom 3 is such a badass game, I love it. I know some people will make the argument that, oh, it's last gen, it's not as good as Doom 2016, but I will tell you what this does that Doom 2016 doesn't is scare the hell out of me. Now don't get me wrong, I'm a giant fan of Doom 2016. It's one of my favorite games this whole generation, absolutely. But Doom 3 is scary, it's just a different experience. Everything moves a bit slower, you just have to manage your resources more. It's definitely a survival horror game in a way that Doom 2016 just isn't. The tension is great, and there are moments where you'll hear something and be like, what was that? Where'd that come from? What the hell? And you'll just be looking around, and you're just, you know, worried about whatever's going to come from the ceiling, or the vent on the floor, or knock over something that's on the wall and come crawling out of there. I mean, death comes from every direction in Doom 3, and I love it. And it's dark, it's scary, it sounds great, and yeah, it's not as pretty as your modern games like Doom 2016 here, which is absolutely jaw-droppingly cool looking in my opinion. But Doom 3 is really special, and you can pick up Doom 3 everywhere that you can play this, Doom 2016. You can play them on PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, of course. Then if you care to look at last-gen systems, it's also on PS3, which is where I got my footage from. And that version's cool because you can play it in 3D if you've got a TV that supports that. And even going back to the original Xbox. So whichever version of Doom you're going to play, whether it be Doom 3 or Doom 2016, or even go back to the classics, I suppose, the original Doom 1 and 2, those are also available on all the modern systems. I think you're set to have a great time this Halloween. So this is a big list now. I've given you a lot of games to look at, a lot of stuff to consider for your spooks and thrills and your general good times. So get yourself a pumpkin ale, or I guess if you're underage, get yourself a pumpkin spice latte. It'll definitely keep you up all night for one of these. And kick back and enjoy spook season. Happy Halloween, everybody. Yes, Igor, fine work. An excellent list to be certain. And so now, dear viewer, a choice lays before you. Which game calls out from the abyss and beckons your soul? Choose carefully so as not to embark on an adventure that is more than your heart can bear. After all, I hope to see you again when we return with more of Dr. Puppenstein's Creature Feature.